I have it. Okay.
All right. Good morning, gentlemen. Today is Kuf Lamed Hey.
Okay.
Hala.
What is that? Kuf Lamed Hey Ahmed?
Ahmed Aleph, first word, top line. Sahu Dahavi Kashachiv. I'm just getting ready to be interrupted. But Hahu Dahavi Kashachiv. So there was a person who was dying. Amr Lay. They say, Insei Laman. They said, who is your wife permitted to? I.e., the question was basically, all right, no, there were no children. Do you have a brother or not? Do you have a brother or not?
Want to get coffee?
Yeah, no. I threw my cup away already.
Do you want coffee?
No thanks. All right.
Hit that last
if you want. Okay, yeah.
Percent.
I want to clear it all out. Fine. How do you have a kashaki? So he's dying. So I'm really Isa Laman. Who's your who's she fit? Who's Amrlahu? Chazia Lakahana Rabba. Right? She's fit. And now it's sort of ironic because she's saying, oh, she's even fit for a Kohen Gadol, right? Obviously, a woman who is either a divorcee,
Right.
or even a woman who's a ula, or a woman who is an almana, right? None of them can marry a Kohen Gadol, but like sort of like sarcastically knows she can go ahead and marry whoever she wants, i.e., she's not zakak liyibum. I have no brothers. Sama Rava says, let's change to Rava. Let's see. So he says, yeah,
Rava.
Yeah. So I just live for the Aleph. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he says, so Amar Rava. So my I understand. What are you concerned about? A husband said, I divorced my wife. Neman. He's believed. So he's believed that either that he divorced her. So he says, that he's believed to divorce her. If she's divorced, she can marry whoever she wants. So even when he says whoever she wants. So
why she fit for
in other words, he means that she can go ahead and marry whoever she wants. She's not. That was the irony. That's what I said. That was the irony of the line, right? So Rabbi Yechon Balsham Magirash Ishti Neman. So Amalei Abai v'Hak Yasser Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef and Rabbi Yechon Balsham Magirash Ishti Ein Neman. We learned that a person who says I divorced my wife is not believed. So Amalei V'La Milo Shaninu. Did we not say Kam Mafer Gam Labo? Yeah, but we said yesterday. So one is going backwards. Let's say there was a ma'aseh that she did, whether she was married or not. So you can't go back retroactively and say, oh, I divorced her, and therefore that dates back. But you could say, right, going forward, that she's divorced because if I want, I can go ahead and divorce her now. I saw thank you. So he says, there's kashas on this. Could we be samach on it? You should be chayshish that perhaps that there is what to be concerned about, and therefore the woman is not necessarily free to go ahead and marry whoever she wants. Hahu davi.
So what does that mean? We're chayshish that there's another brother somewhere.
So in this, so in this case, or they're chayshish that, let's say, whether he divorced her or not, right? So let's say there was a brother, right? So let's say there was a brother, but he says she's free to marry whoever she wants, i.e., I divorced her, right? So therefore, in this case, right, I made a little mistake at the beginning. The shadow wasn't whether she had brothers or not. The shadow was whether he divorced her or not. Yeah. So I started off on the wrong foot. I wasn't continuing. Right. The question. Right. So it wasn't that. Right. We'll assume we'll get into the other case of whether there's brothers or not. That's actually the next part. So, but this case, I think, was referring to whether the person has nemanas lagabe he divorced her or not. So now, as we said, there should be chayshish that he did not divorce her, and therefore there would be chalitza required. Now we're going to the brothers, right? So now there was somebody who was muchzak lon the less that was assumed that he had no brothers, right? I was confused. I was jumping a step. The Yomar b'shas misas, and he says during the time of death, the less I have no brothers. So I'm gonna have Yosef. I understand. My lichush. What are you concerned about? God, first of all, muchzak the less le'achin. First of all, it was known to him that we always thought that this guy had no brothers. And furthermore, when he was dying, the less he says he has no brothers. So I'm Abaye, I Hamri the Ika Adam Sayam the Yadi. There are supposedly there are witnesses overseas who know of his brother, and they will be able to go ahead and testify that he has a brother, and therefore she's not free to go ahead and marry whoever she wants. She has to do Yibra Chalitza. So the Gemara says, "I Hashtamiyas Halasnu, come on." Okay, fine. So there's people in Medina Siyam, supposedly, but they're not here in front of us to testify. So Lav Hainu de Rebbe Chanina. This is not the case of Rebbe Chanina. Dama Rebbe Chanina. Rebbe Chanina says another case. Eidem B'tzad Estin V'Tiaser. So over there, it was referring to a woman who's held captive, right? A woman who was held captive to say that. So she was held captive. So it was assumed that a woman is held captive is violated, right? And therefore, she would not be able to go ahead and marry a Kohen. So over there, so it said, so over there, so she said basically, I was held captive, but I'm pure. So it's like Peshas or Peshahitir, right? She was the one who initiated it, but there could be witnesses, right? But there's witnesses supposedly overseas that basically say that she was violated, that she's usher. Right now, without the witnesses, she's mutter, right? She's mutter because she's the one who says, so she didn't have to say anything and she would have been fine.
Say that witnesses she was captured, then the assumption is that she was violated.
But that was already after the fact, right? So that's the whole question that was going in the Gemara Ksubas. Right, so Gemara says, I understand there's witnesses over there of a Tiyaser, and we should answer her. The witnesses are not in front of us. So, okay, unless the witnesses are here, so she's mutter, she's muteris. So over in our case, there's witnesses that there's brothers. Those witnesses aren't here. Why should we ask her? She should be going ahead and mutter. So I'm going to Imikila the Shvuya. Understand when it comes to Shvuya, so the whole thing is really a derabana, right? Is a derabana rechveishesh that perhaps she was an as and therefore, so we could be makil over there, but who says we should be makil over here? But in the case of Eshesish, right, where it's basically deraisa that she's supposed to be yibum or chalitza, and she's doing another man. Similarly, right? Nevertheless. Right, we should be concerned that that there are witnesses, and therefore, since we're dealing with the fact that there are brothers, therefore she should wait to do chalitza. So now going back to our mission. So what were we talking about in the mission? The mission was like this. We said the case was it was brothers. We said Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, or it was Reuven and Shimon says, "Oh, we got another brother, Levi." All right, and basically Reuven said, "Oh." So in that case, I don't want to say what Reuven said because that's going to be the question of Gemara. But basically, in that case, so Levi, because Shimon admitted that was his brother, he will give his portion, right? Levi's portion to his, but Levi doesn't get the other portion that from Reuven. So in other words, let's say it was a case we said it was $30,000. So if it was two brothers, right? One guy gets 15, the other guy gets 15. But over here, Shimon is saying, no. Shimon is saying that I should get 10, right? Reuven should get 10, and Levi should get 10, right? So therefore, okay, you get 10, and you give up from your 5, so we'll give Levi 5, but Shimon doesn't, but Reuven doesn't have to. Then we said, if Levi dies, that land goes back to Shimon only, not Reuven. Because Shimon says he's my brother, and I give him this, and therefore he gets it back, while Reuven didn't. And then let's say, however, then the Mishnah says at the end, let's say Levi got money from somewhere else, and then Levi died. So his money is split between Shimon and Reuven. Reuven all of a sudden becomes a brother. Now, let's see what's going on here. So so in our case, what's Reuven saying? My kamri. So kamri achinu. If they're saying, if Reuven says in the beginning, yeah, he is my brother. So kamri achinu. Amayito imo bechelko v'sulo. Right? Why is only Shimon give up his group? If Reuven says, yeah, he's our brother, so then he should also go ahead and give it up. Right? 10. Ella kamri lav achinu. They say he's not my brother. Same as Seifa. Look at the Seifa. So we said in the last case that let's say Levi got inheritance from somewhere else, and then Levi dies, so the money should go to his brothers. So it should go to both Reuven and Shimon. But if Reuven is saying he's not my brother, right? Yishachi v'imo. Right, the halacha is that the two brothers go ahead and inherit from Levi. Didn't you just say, Reuven, didn't you just say Levi's not your brother? So why are you all of a sudden now, oh, he's my brother, get my inheritance? You already said he's not your brother. So Gemara says, Leitzvicha, Tika Amri, Ein Anu Yodim, right? Reuven, or whatever brothers are out there, says, I don't know about Levi. He could be another brother. He could not be. Dad had some wild years in college. No idea, right? So therefore, regardless of Amarava, Zaysameres, Manali Biatcha, Vahala Me'erni Yadea, Pater. Because in this case, right, Levi is saying, oh, Shimon says, I'm your brother, Reuven. Now you got to give me from your portion, right? Instead of getting 15, you should only get 10 and give me 5 from yours. And Reuven is saying, I don't know. But the halakha we see in the Mishnah is, even though, despite the fact that Reuven is saying, I don't know, he doesn't have to give it. So the Gemara says, let's learn from here, Zayis Amaris Manali Biyadcha. If a guy makes a claim, I claim from Eddie Yomi $100, V'Hala Me'erni Yadeh says, I don't know, that he's putter. Just like Levi is saying, give me some of the Yerusha, he's putter.
What's the reach for them, right? Way gets them.
You're rich.
Well, it's assume it's up. So you never heard of it before.
Right.
If you want to get money from me, you have to prove that most of the Chavera are right.
So, in the case of Bari V'Shema, no, but Bari V'Shema is different than Bari V'Bari, right?
Bari.
Bari is
One says I don't know, and the other one.
Levi's saying, right? Levi's saying, give me the land. Levi's saying, you're my brother, Reuven. Reuven's saying, I have no idea. Levi says to Shimon, you're my brother. Shimon says, yeah, we're brothers. So therefore, he's giving him. So, but the claim on
Maybe that's a proof.
It's not Reuven.
Maybe
It-
prove that he's brother.
right. Well, in this case, so his barbershop, so any day putter. So we'll say he's putter. Look, if there is proof, then Avada gives. He can claim whatever he wants, but his proof is proof, right? But if there's no proof, the potter. So Abai Yomar Abai says no. Really, in most cases, Bari V'Shema is Bari Adif. Shani Hacha de Kimana li'acher b'yadacha dami. Because over here, in the case of Bari V'Shema, I'm claiming money from Eddie, and Eddie says I don't know, so I'm certain he's not, and I'm dealing with Eddie. But when it comes to, in the case of that Reuven, right? Excuse me, Shimon is claiming that Levi is our brother, and you got to go ahead and give him. Okay, Reuven can say to Shimon, none of your business. If Levi is making a claim against me, that's something else. Shimon is the one making the claim. He's our brother. Therefore, you have to go ahead and give. Levi doesn't know. Reuven doesn't know. And therefore, Reuven is able to say to Shimon, Lav Bal Vernat, right? You're not involved. So therefore, in a case where the two people are involved, so therefore the guy is he's the direct plaintiff. Over here, since he's not the plaintiff, therefore Reuven doesn't owe Shimon an answer, and therefore Reuven is not chayav to go ahead and give Levi anything. Fine, 2 dots.
Wow.
So then it says, let's say Levi dies. It goes back to if those assets go to the original to the brother, to Shimon, who gave it to him. So let's say Levi, we said, gave up $5,000. Shimon gave up $5,000 from his $15,000 to go ahead and to give to Levi, because he said Levi's his brother. Levi had it for a year, and some of the crops started to grow, and then Levi died. So we said Levi died, so it goes back to Shimon. But let's say there was extra; it was worth 5,000. Now it's 7,000. So what happens to the 2,000? Is that considered to be makom acher and divided between Reuven and Shimon, or is it not? So if it was already above the shoulders, in other words, like payros, that's considered to be definitely outside. Outside income, and therefore that's divided amongst the brothers. So something that's not that high, something that's really part of the karka, going dikla v'alim, arav aska sritin. So it says, it's like a case of a tree that grew stronger, or the land that started to get fertilized and become healthier for it to grow, which becomes more. Becomes worth more. So with that in sum gets increased. Is that considered to be like outside Nechasim Nefel to Levi, or is that part of the thing that came from Shimon, part of the land that came from Shimon, and therefore just goes directly back to Shimon? Teku. So the Gemara does not give a teretz. Fine. Now Mishnah.
Nein, Mishnah.
Mishnah says, Misha Meis Benin says, Daitiki Kshura al Yerechel. A person, he died and he had a daitiki. And we'll soon see that daitiki is basically, so we know that Matas Prima, let's just go over a couple things. Matas Prima is basically a person is dying. And he wants to go ahead and give over his will, his assets. Now, normally, the law is you got to go ahead and do a kinyan, write a star, do a kinyan. So this is how the will be when he dies. But Matas Prima is basically, he's giving over, right? Right. Basically, he's giving it now, but it comes into fruition from Me'aksha, from the time he dies. But we don't make it write it down. It'll aggravate him. It'll cause him to die earlier. That is a regular master, but that which is said merely verbal, right? If the guy says we need to go ahead and write it down, all of a sudden you have basically jumped out of the special a situation where we allow just a verbal commitment. And once you say, hey, let's go ahead and write it in a document, then now you want the regular halachas of documents to work, that there has to be a kinyan on it. So let's say he wrote it out, a daitiki. We'll soon see what exactly the daitiki is, like a will. It was tied to his leg, it was with him, he was in his hand. But remember, he was still with him. He never gave it. He never did it to somebody else. That's not considered anything. It's like a star that was never made a kinyan on it, or a star that didn't have signatures, and therefore it's considered nothing. However, let's say he goes ahead and he gives this daitiki, right? But he gives it to somebody else to acquire. They made a kinyan on it. Devarav kayamim. Then it does go ahead. It is valid. So let's see what's going on. So talking about an AZ daitiki, what is considered? What is a daitiki? Kol shekasaba. Right. This actually daitiki is a play on the words of datehe lemikum liyus. Right. From here will basically be a place to go and to be after after he dies, for you to inherit.
Skip the one.
Did I? I think I read it. I didn't explain it. So he gives it to somebody else, whether that recipient, right, is somebody who was in the will or not in the will. In other words, if he gives the star to anybody, right, then that the kinyan, then the star works, because there was a kinyan on the star, right? Whether the person was his son who was going to inherit, or whether it was the doctor who was around who did a kinyan. So talking about AZ, right? This is the place, right, where you'll go ahead and basically inherit from after me. Matana, and what is a matana? Right? Basically, a matana is giving over to him, right, when he's dying, is from today, ule'achar misa. So elamayim le'achar misa. Right, who dahavi matana? Only if he says a matana is only if he said now. But if he just gives a matana now, lo havi matana, it's not a matana. So Rabbi Yehovi Koma, this is what it means to say. Ezi matnas bari shehi kamatna shchimira. What is a matana of a healthy person that works effectively the same as matna shchimira? Delaykani elo liachamisa. If someone says, okay, this is yours, miachshav liachamisa, meaning you acquire the what's it called, the Karen, the principal, right? And I'll still get the payros, but once I die, then you have the principal and the payros, right? Which is sort of how the Matan Shchimera is working. So that matana is just like a Matan Shchimera. In other words, it works the same sort of way. Living trust. So Yosef Rabba, actually, by FYI, I saw there's the All Daf app. I think it's very willing. It has like a shear or something on the common day wills. So for those of you who have the app or online, whatever it is. Anyway, a little plug for them. So Yosef Rabba Rav Huna Biachsadra Debei Rav Yosef Kamar Shmid Rabbi Yechanan Shchivimra She'amar Kisru V'Tnu Manala Pliny Umes. The person's dying, and he says, now remember, he has to say it. You don't have to write it down. Once he says, write it and give it, right? So now is he saying, write it and give it, and that's the only way it works. And then the guy dies, umes, and then he dies. So the guy did not write it and give it before he died. So do we say there was no will, right? Because you can't give a star after the person's dying. Or do we say that he all he had to do was verbally say it. He didn't have to say write it, but maybe he insisted on it. The only way for it to be valid is if you write it and give it. But if you don't write it and give it, maybe it doesn't work. Ume, so the guy dies. Ein kaisvin v'naisnin. You do not go ahead and then write it and fulfill his last wishes. Shemelei gomer liknaso ela b'shtar. Right? Maybe he insisted on it to be done only through a document. Then shtar achamisa, and shtar cannot be delivered the achamisa of the person of the principal involved. Shamalu Rabbi Elazar as diruba. Be careful. So be careful. Says Rabbi Elazar. Be careful to follow Rabbi Yechanan's halacha. Rav Shvizi Amar Rabbi Elazar Amra. So it was really Rabbi Elazar who made the first initial statement. V'Amalu Rabbi Yechanan, and Rabbi Yechanan was the one as diruba who says follow Rabbi Elazar's halacha. All right. So the question was, who made the statement? And who was the one who said, follow the halacha? So Amarav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Kvasi Rav Shizi, the second way is more logical to say. Why? It's more logical. Marta Bishlam Rabbi Elazar, Amra the Rabbi Elazar said it, and Rabbi Elazar was actually the Talmud of Rabbi Yechanan. Itzich Rabbi Yechanan, the Asuri Allah. So therefore, it makes sense for his Rabbi Yechanan to testify that yes, this is a good halacha. Be careful. Allah, the Rabbi Elazar. It makes sense for him to go ahead and be made about that which Rabbi Elazar taught. Eli Amarta Rabbi Yechanan, but Rabbi Yechanan was one who said it. Itzich Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi. Right? You need Rabbi Elazar to go ahead and testify about his Rabbi. And furthermore, Tashma, come and listen. As they're going to get to the mission on top. Yeah. All right. So it says that I voted. Furthermore, Tashma, come and listen to Rabbi Elazar, Amra, that Rabbi Elazar said, the Shalach Rabbi Mishmei Rabbi Avu. Rabbi Elazar sent out to other places. Have you heard them? Rabbi Elazar, he sent out Mishum Rabbeinu. He sent out to the Galus Mishum Rabbeinu. If a person was dying, and he said, write and give this will, right, or this money to Ploni, to a certain person, umes. Then that you can't go ahead and write it and give it to because perhaps he only want to go ahead and transfer over through a document, and therefore the document cannot be delivered after the principal involved died. Go ahead and check it out. What does it mean check it out? Daitiki mevattelas daitiki. One halach is that a daitiki is mevatel one daitiki. In other words, if let's say it's a daitiki dated January 1st, and that was basically like we said, right. A document that said from here he will collect after my death, and then there's one dated January 5th with the same land. So the daitiki, the second one is mevatel the first one, right. That's one halacha, and furthermore, our halacha. The reason why I bring this is shrimir sh'amar kisu tnula manul ploni. The person's dying, and he says, instead of just saying where the money should go, he says, write it down and give it over. And a star, manalaplani, umes, and then he dies. Rowing, then we go ahead and we see im kamivas kaisvin, vim laf and kaisvin. In other words, if we're talking about a case of where he basically wanted the star to be proof, but really the kinyan was affected by his words. In other words, just write down as proof. But that doesn't make the kinyan. The kinyan is, I know as a dying person, I could say, give $100 to my mailman. Okay? But I want you to write down as proof. So by just saying it, in other words, do we say, or we check, did he want it to the regular done verbally and just write it down as proof? Or did he say, I want you to write down and give it, and that's the way it'll be given over? So that's what it means. Tibadek, we check. We see if it was just something to strengthen his words like proof, love or not, then you don't. So Mason Rabbi Avraham Memo, so Bar Yashamar, a healthy person says, he says, go ahead and write and give Manal Ploni, and then he dies. We don't go ahead and write it and give it. Mashma, but a person was dying, then we would right, then we would give it. Didn't we just teach that the person's dying and he says write it and give it? You don't do it after his death. So Guaran says no. So he asked the question. He gave the answer. But me best kaiko. In other words, he's only doing it to back up his word. In other words, he wanted it to go ahead and transfer via oral transmission. However, that which he told him to write it down was just proof that I gave, my mailman $100. And hey, what does it mean to go ahead and strengthen your position? Right? So Kedama Rav Chizah, like top of the page, like Rav Chizah says,
Right,
The Kinyan Minei Maisif Al Panasada, right? And then go ahead and basically write it down.
Right.
That it'll be in addition to that which I gave it. In other words, if he says that, right, write it down in addition to me saying it over, then you know that it's for proof, right? And Hachanami Domer so it's over here when he says af kaiso, even also write it down and give it, meaning I already gave it to the mailman verbally because I'm a shrivmera, right? But write it down as a proof for the mailman, and therefore I want to make sure that he gets it. And Itamar, so we learned Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel halacha kaisav v'noisen. Halacha is that if we know that it was just a backup, it was just proof that he wanted to make sure the mailman was taken care of. All right, then you do go ahead and write it. Kaisav v'noisen v'chein Amar Rav Nachman halacha. The halacha is kaisav v'noisen. That indeed, if it's only used as proof, then you could write the proof and then go ahead and deliver it. But nevertheless, the kinyan is really chal
Right.
from the initial instructions. All right, we'll stop here. Mishnah, Shtech, everybody. Everybody have a wonderful day. And Hashem, I will see you tomorrow.